Talk about football.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of the We Like Football podcast. I am Hayden Yerashunas, joined as always by the best in the business, Andy Watkins. Andy, how are you, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, friend? I imagine I'm slightly better than you. I know the extent of your Christmas weekend bender. I got the better of my hangover yesterday. I hope you're not riding a 4-day one, but I think I know your tendencies well enough to expect the opposite.
So to paint a picture, the hosts of the We Like Football podcast got together this weekend, and for our livers, that is never a good idea. I am starting to recover a little bit. Yesterday was significantly rougher than today. Tomorrow, I plan on just being good to go and being back in action. For sure, other reasons to kind of be upset that we'll get into when we talk about Pennsylvania football on the west side of Pennsylvania versus Pennsylvania football on the east side of Pennsylvania. Anything before we get started, buddy?
Merry Christmas to all our loyal viewers. Tim Chandler, thanks for the shout out. You're a handsome guy. Shane Borisuk, you're a good singer. Matt Perugino, great hair. Thanks to all our loyal listeners. We love you. We like football. We couldn't do it without your continued support. Keep watching, Hayden. Let's get into it, buddy.
Yep, for sure. And I'll echo the Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays sentiment. Hopefully you guys got to spend some time with the people you love. Like I mentioned a little bit before, I got to spend some time with the people that I love over the weekend. All right, so that is Andy, and of course my mom. I got to see Andy's mom on a nostalgic run through beautiful Plymouth, Pennsylvania, which was awesome as well. So yeah, my weekend was really solid. Let's jump right into football because there was certainly some solid games in the NFL this week. We sort of wrapped up the penultimate week in the football season. Still some stones left unturned, still some outcomes that are not super certain, but there were some teams that were mathematically eliminated. We'll talk about that. Last week, we tried to touch on all 16 games in the NFL from week 15. We didn't like how rushed it felt, so we're going to focus on 7 of them today to kind of touch on in significant detail. We got to sort of see these ones, whether we were in the right state of mind is neither here nor there. We will also talk about the playoff picture, again, kind of winding down the 2020 season. We'll talk about who is in the playoffs, who's clinched, whose journey is sort of set, who still has a week 17 where their fan bases are going to kind of be on the edge of their seats for a little bit. So we'll talk about the playoff picture there. Talk about some Pro Bowl snubs and surprises that we found from this year's Pro Bowl. And then we will finish it up with the game that we call Hike It or Spike It. So in the holiday season, we got Christmas Day football, which is always awesome. This year, the New Orleans Saints beat the Minnesota Vikings pretty handily, 52-33. The Saints clinched the NFC South during that game. The biggest story, Alvin Kamara. Usually we're used to talking about Christmas shoes being sort of a sad, somber topic. That dude put on red and green on his feet and tied an NFL record that was 90 years old. A pretty impressive day from Kamara.
To say the very least, Alvin. Kamara, tomato, what have you. One of the best backs in football, transcendent talent. And you can kind of see, especially now with Michael Thomas out, that he has become even more so the linchpin, the crux of their offense. Even before that, I think, Kamara probably was the bell cow, but it's become even more apparent, and they're going to go as far as he takes them, which if his Christmas performance is any indication, is pretty far. I know we had discussed it. I believe, what did we say? Kamara had 58 career touchdowns after this one. For some perspective, LaDainian Tomlinson, you may have heard of, after 4 seasons, had racked up 60 scores. For some more perspective, an active back, one who we know was a force at his peak, Le'Veon Bell. I forget the number. I want to say 43, but he was drafted 2013. Alvin Kamara has put up at least a dozen more touchdowns than a several-time All-Pro active back in Le'Veon Bell, just to give you some indication of how prolific he is at finding the end zone.
Mm-hmm. Yep, some folks were a little bit bent out of shape because there was certainly a time where Sean Payton could have let Alvin Kamara, tomato, run for the 7th touchdown Opted not to, ended up scoring a touchdown with Taysom Hill. It was a pretty sweet quarterback power that I got to call in my in-laws' kitchen, which was a whole lot of fun to watch and see happen. But regardless, six rushing touchdowns. Again, I mentioned that single game rushing touchdown record has been held since 1929. So obviously, not a whole lot of people did it. Alvin Kamara, as you kind of pointed out, being compared to LaDainian Tomlinson, he's in good company. He's certainly off to an awesome start to his career in his first 4 seasons. In that game, Drew Brees had 19 completions out of 26 attempts, threw for 311 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns through the air. But when you got a running back who's scoring whenever the hell he wants to, you don't really need to throw touchdowns. On the Vikings side, they are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs now. Not a terrible outing, I thought, from Kirk Cousins. Went 27 of 41 for 291 yards and 3 touchdowns. You talk about backs that are pretty solid. Dalvin Cook is another name that's kind of right up there with best backs in the league, at least if you ask folks who watch football consistently. Had 15 carries for 73 yards and a score. Adam Thielen had 8 receptions for 97 yards and a touchdown. And my rookie football crush, Justin Jefferson, had 6 receptions for 85 yards as well. Again, 1 week left to play of the regular season. It'll be interesting to see what the Saints decide to do as far as resting folks, or they are still playing for home field advantage if the Packers kind of do their thing and lose that game next week against Chicago. So it'll be interesting to see if Alvin Kamara can tack on a couple more touchdowns this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I would expect they will play all their healthy star guys. I wouldn't, being that seeding is still in the discussion. As you said, Vikings offensively had a good day. Defensively, that's kind of been their weak point all year long, and it was apparent in this game. Their offense, did a good job keeping things relatively close for a while, but Kamara was far too strong a force for them to withstand for 4 quarters, as evidenced by his record-tying day. The next game we have on the docket here isn't, again, not another barn burner. The Buccaneers kind of imposed their will on the Detroit Lions on Saturday. They came out victorious 47-7. Of course, Matt Stafford went down early in that game, but I don't think it would have made much of a difference. What say you?
No, I don't think so either. And the biggest story kind of before the game, COVID just kind of ravaged the coach's office in that locker room. They had 5 coaches out, ended up having Evan Rothstein, who had never coached a position in the NFL, let alone been a coordinator or called plays or had to do anything like that. I mean, I'm a big fan of The Office. I actually think I am wearing a Dunder Mifflin shirt right now. So Evan Rothstein sounds like he was sort of the assistant to the head coach as opposed to the assistant head coach like Dwight Schrute. He had to go out and be tasked with calling plays against Tom Brady, which, buddy, good luck. It was essentially over before it started. Tom Brady went 22 of 27 for 348 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's also worth mentioning he was pulled at halftime because they were just rolling. So, I mean, that stat line tells you everything you know about the matchup between Tom Brady and the defensive mind that is Evan Rothstein. Mike Evans had himself a day, 10 receptions for 181 yards, 2 touchdowns. Gronk had 2 receptions, and they were both touchdowns. On the day, he finished with 58 yards through the air. Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown also had 1 touchdown each. And then on the defensive side, the Buccaneers finished with 4 sacks and an interception. Really a tough day, and I mean, really just a tough task for the Lions in this matchup against one of the best quarterbacks to do it ever.
Oh yeah, Lions very clearly outmatched. You mentioned all the headliners on the offensive side of the ball, and they are quite imposing when they're hitting on all cylinders. We've talked about them before. Brady, Evans, Godwin, Brown, Gronk, Brait, Fournette, Ronald Jones. It's an imposing, deep offense, and you mentioned the defense excelling. That's nothing new. That defense, I was looking at their numbers yesterday, is a wagon in the front 7. And Ndamukong Suh's still there. Linebacker, scary good. Devin White, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul. This is a team with a with Tom Brady now seeming to be hitting on all cylinders, his skill players, and he seeming to have found a better rhythm than they've maybe had all year, that they could be a real threat in the postseason.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely, for sure. Kind of moving away from the NFC South, kind of going on to the AFC side of things, but still keeping it on Saturday. The night game, just another devastating loss for the Raiders. I know that there was a lot of jokes throughout the year about the Chargers dropping one possession games and really close games and just ripping the hearts out of their fans. The Raiders have seemingly taken that torch and run with it from the Chargers. The Dolphins beat the Raiders 26-25, kind of the thing that you see everywhere. Ryan Fitzpatrick spins his head around like a freaking owl, got a really blatant face mask call, where again his head is not facing the right direction, still completes a pass to Mac Hollins, who happens to be on my board of Eagles drafts picks since 2016 here. Behind me, hits him on the sideline, sets it up for a game-winning field goal. Tell us a little bit about this Dolphins-Raiders game if you saw it, man.
I was at work watching it, so I was tuned half in, half out. But from what I could see, I was – allow me to correct that. For the first about 3.5 quarters, I was about half tuned in. And then as I saw them start trading points in those last 4 minutes, I couldn't look away. It was why we love football. Lots of high dramatics at the end. As you mentioned, the Raiders – boy, have really plummeted here. I just pulled up their schedule. They've lost 5 of their last 6, and the lone win was against the Jets. So, but yeah, as you said,
which was almost dropped also, as a last-second Hail Mary kind of saved that one. So
yeah, yeah, I'm not sure. The Dolphins, again, they seem to be outplaying their talent level. They, on the opposite end of the spectrum, have been on quite the run. I was perusing their schedule last night. Let me just pull it up here quick. The Dolphins started 1-3. Since then, they're on a 9-2 tear. The losses to the Broncos and the Chiefs. This one, they showed to be a team that is learning how to win, how to pull out close games, which is what they'll need if they're going to have any chance of making a run. One thing I thought was worth noting was Tua being pulled in that game, and Ryan Fitzmagic being the one to spearhead the charge. Who do you think the Dolphins should start if they do manage to make the playoffs?
Oh man, it's tough because you notice Tua gets pulled when the offense seems to need a spark. And I was looking kind of at the stats from that game. Tua went 17 of 22, not terrible completion percentage, but only 94 yards. Also had a touchdown, but again, in crunch time when it mattered, Ryan Flores kind of pulling Tua out. He's done this before again this season, and Ryan Fitzpatrick comes in and has 182 yards and a score. It's tough to know which direction they're going to go in if they do end up getting into the playoffs. And there's somebody we're going to talk about a little bit later when we're talking about who's still alive and what the paths are for teams that maybe have not solidified their spot in the playoffs. Ryan Fitzpatrick looks like he is hot right now. I don't know if you necessarily take away the hot hand. I understand that Tua is your future. But if you do end up making that push for the playoffs for this year, your future is going to kind of take a back seat, right? You're going to have to win now, is at least how I see it.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think Fitzpatrick being the guy they turn to in crunch time is kind of indicative of where they stand. I know they've kind of flip-flopped back and forth, but I would expect this to be the last passing of the torch, so to speak, at least for the 2020 season. I think Fitzpatrick will get the nod moving forward. I think we'll see how far he could take them if they do, again, manage to make it to the postseason. Likely that offensively, at least, they'll try to ride the back of Myles Gaskin, seventh-round guy out of Washington in 2019. He had quite the day, 14 carries, 87 yards, and then through the air, another 5 receptions, 82 yards, 2 scores. Again, Dolphins kind of these no-name guys are making plays for him, but Gaskin has been their best back all year, and they did well to ride him on Saturday. On the opposite side of the ball, on the opposite side of the ball, Derek Carr, 21 of 34, 336 yards and a touchdown. Two pass catchers thrived for Las Vegas. One I know you're fond of, Darren Waller, 5 catches for 112 yards. Another outstanding outing by him. Of course, I saved the other guy for last.
Of course.
We'll preview your bitterness. We'll get around to it momentarily, but the other Raiders pass catcher to excel in that game was Nelson Aguilar, 5 catches, 155 yards and a score. He's over 800 on the year. Aguilar, in what's turned into a down season for the Raiders, is shining.
Oh, it's so much fun to see Nelson Aguilar and Mac Hollins have an impact on the Raiders-Dolphins game on Saturday right after Christmas. God, it's so frustrating to be an Eagles fan. Nelson Aguilar's put together a pretty solid season. We've talked about Darren Waller. That dude is just an absolute baller. I was watching some fantasy stuff on my TV before. There's a chance he goes like number 2 as a tight end next year. He's right up in that conversation with Travis Kelce and George Kittle. From a fantasy perspective, I would almost favor Waller over Kittle because I think he's going to catch more balls and score more touchdowns. Granted, Kittle got hurt this year, but I'm not going to get too far off on that tangent. I think that's all we need to say about that game. I was watching maybe a little bit more intently than you. I might have also been having a little bit more fun than you, so we might have been paying the same sort of attention. I will not steal your shine. I know my place in our duo here, so I'm going to just let you take this next game. Go for it, man.
The next game, of course, is the Pittsburgh Steelers getting off the schneid, taking down the Indianapolis Colts by a final score of 28-24. It didn't always look like it would have that fortuitous an outcome for Pittsburgh or its fans. I previewed last week that you might see me swinging back there. Fortunately, it didn't come to that. The Steelers managed to right the ship after falling behind bigly in the second half, going in the first half, I should say, continuing into the second half. Pittsburgh, midway through the third, was down 24-7, and then just seemingly flipped a switch. Big Ben was hitting on deep throws. All the pass catchers, many of whom have been much maligned this year, were making plays. Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I look, every couple fights, I forgive you. I hope you forgive me. Juju Smith-Schuster, 9 catches, 96 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 TikTok post game. A lot of fun. Love that guy. Never, ever had a problem with him, like I said.
For what it's worth, I think he probably heard you and realized that he had to get his shit together. So if anything, we should probably credit you with a little bit of what Juju was able to accomplish this week.
Right. Juju's good. Juju, of course, falls back on me. You're welcome, Mr. Smith-Schuster. He wasn't the only pass catcher to make plays. Deontay Johnson, 8 catches, 75 yards. He had a 39-yard touchdown reception, a dart from Big Ben that kind of got momentum rolling in the Steelers' direction. Of course, I don't want to read too much into this because it had been about a month since they'd played nearly so well, or well at all, I should say. It appears they don't intend on going out of their way to maintain any momentum. They would like to win against Cleveland, of course, this upcoming Sunday. However, they've already announced that Mason Rudolph will be getting the start, and I would expect more to follow. I think if they're going to rest guys, they should go all in on resting guys. If you're sitting Big Ben, you should probably sit Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Cam Hayward, Joe Hayden, any of those linchpin guys over 30. Maybe give thought to the TJ Watts and Minka Fitzpatrick's as well. We did enjoy this game together, at least most of it. I ushered you away to pick up my pizza at one point, of course. But what were your thoughts?
You didn't. I offered because I knew that you would be heavily invested. No, the Steelers did have a glimmer of hope. It had seemed like the last couple of weeks they were certainly not trending in the right direction. It was nice to see them kind of be able to pull that out towards the end. You mentioned the resting of folks, and I know we had this conversation on Sunday. I don't think that that's going to take away from anything that they're going to be able to do in the playoffs. I think that all of those veteran guys that you mentioned are still going to go out and be as consistent as they would be if they played and just have an opportunity to be healthy. You brought up TJ Watt. We noticed that in the game, he came up a little bit limpy. He did not come out of the game, but that's one of those where you really do have to evaluate it as somebody who's making decisions and really think about, okay, I'm already in the playoffs. let's give us the best chance to win in week 18 because week 17 isn't going to impact us moving forward. While I'm on the defense, that's sort of what's going to keep the Steelers alive or be where they make their money in the playoffs, I guess I should say. They had 5 sacks altogether on Sunday. TJ Watt notably with 2, Avery Williamson. Let's see, Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt also had 1 as well. They had an interception. They had a forced fumble. So the defense was out there making plays. It was refreshing to see Ben Roethlisberger look like a more vintage Ben Roethlisberger as opposed to what we've kind of gotten used to see over the last couple of weeks with the inaccurate throws, the being baited into throw into bad coverages. So I thought that was solid there for the Steelers, not to like rain on the parade or anything, but the run game does continue to be an issue. We've talked about this before where that's kind of a big driving factor in the playoffs. If you're able to run the football effectively, you're putting your team in a good spot. Although the Steelers famously throw short passes as opposed to running the football, and that seemed to have worked a little bit better for them. I think they'll probably just kind of continue to carry that out through the playoffs and whatever kind of run they're able to make.
Yeah, it's a so-called extension of their running game is the generous way of wording it. It is not a sufficient replacement for the running game. I don't have it here in the notes, but I know offhand they rushed 14 times for just 20 yards on Sunday. So again, another dismal outing from that perspective. You could see, though, the way their offense was able to open up just by Big Ben hitting a couple deep shots. I think if they continue to let him uncork those deep balls, if he continues to do so comfortably, give his guys shots, that'll open things up for the offense. Of course, in the first half, they looked much the same as they had. I'm not sure what switch flipped. I hope they keep it on the up and up. It was nice to be given some an injection of hope, I should say, going into the postseason, because the Steelers for at least 30 minutes looked like the group that could make some noise in January and maybe even February. As you said, it seems one hand washes the other. Once things open up, Deontay Johnson caught that deep ball. Suddenly the defense is reinvigorated. They're making splash plays. They're forcing the opposing offense off the field quickly. The offense comes out off that momentum, builds on it. It's a snowball effect. That's when the Steelers are firing on all cylinders, they can be a real force. It's just a matter of whether or not they can regain that momentum and keep it rolling. On the other side,
oh, my fault, man. I just one final thought. I think that something that's going to mask sort of their inability to run the football is if the defense is able to set them up with short fields. We saw that with the strip sack and getting the ball on the 3-yard line. If they could do that a little bit more, again, it won't matter if you're able to put together those methodical 15, 16, 17 play drives that knock like half a quarter off the clock.
Right. Yeah, I think I've said my piece on the Steelers. I could go for another 20 minutes, but we are making a more concerted effort to be
concise would be a nice word. Yeah.
Exactly. So just to touch on the opposition a little bit, Phillip Rivers, 22 of 35, 270 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Jonathan Taylor, another good game from him on the ground, 18 carries for 70 yards and 2 scores. Indy, with this loss, is now the 8th seed. We're not sure whether or not they're going to make it in the postseason. They do still have a chance. They're the lone remaining AFC team that's not currently in with a chance. We'll touch on that a little later on, but I don't want to steal your shine much as you let me have mine. Of course, you're not as happy to talk about it, but I'll let you tell me about the Cowboys-Eagles game anyhow.
Oh, thank you so much. So contrary to popular belief, there is a team that is going to win the NFC East. I know that nobody wants it right now. Everybody's trying to give it away. There is one team that will not win the NFC East. That would be the Philadelphia Eagles. They were mathematically eliminated from playoff contention this week when the Dallas Cowboys beat them 37-17. It was nice the last couple weeks to sort of forget about the ineptitude of the front office, to forget that the roster is a bottom 3 roster in all of football, and just to be enamored by Jalen Hurts and his physical abilities. It seemed like he came back down to earth on Sunday. But what was sort of more glaring, and another just reason that the Cowboys were able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles by 20 points, was something that we call X's and O's versus Jimmy's and Joe's, when we're talking about Jimmys and Joes, we're talking about players that have to play on each side of the field. It was really apparent that the Dallas Cowboys offense, which on paper has one of the best trios of receivers in the league. Again, that's on paper, and I know that Amari Cooper might have had his struggles this year, but with Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Cedarian Lamb, CeeDee Lamb, as most folks would probably know him, right? They very much looked like they were playing a defensive backfield with Jannard Avery and with Marcus Epps and with Michael Jacquet. They were outmatched from the jump. And that became really apparent with just looking at the Cowboys receivers' numbers. Michael Gallup finished the day with 6 receptions for 121 yards and 2 scores. Amari Cooper had 4 receptions for 121 yards. CeeDee Lamb had 3 receptions for 65 yards. They all 8, and then Ezekiel Elliott must have known that my fantasy team was done because he didn't do shit for it all year, but then of course decides to rattle off a 19 carry 105-yard game on the ground, also tacked on 4 receptions for 34 yards. The signal caller here was Andy Dalton, went 22 of 30, 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. The Cowboys offense was solely what won them that game. There was some other things on the other side of the ball where the Eagles could have made different adjustments, done some things a little bit differently to maybe give themselves a better chance to win. There was, of course, the controversial fumble at the end where Jalen Hurts, it looked to everybody who was watching the play that he was down, but the call on the field was a fumble. They ended up losing that review, so their chance to win kind of dwindled down from that point. Mentioned Jalen Hurts's kind of fall back down to just being a normal human being. I know for a couple weeks I had joked that he was Michael Vick and Jesus Christ himself. Maybe had some of the Michael Vick elements, but certainly not the Jesus Christ himself elements this week. Went 21 of 39 for 342 yards in the air, had a touchdown, had 2 interceptions, also had 9 carries for 69 yards.
Nice.
There it is. Good. I was hoping you would. And then Miles Sanders, kind of to wrap up with the Eagles, had 15 carries for 57 yards, also tacked on 27 yards in the air. And if you're looking for any sort of nostalgia, just Deshaun Jackson caught an 81-yard touchdown reception, ran around, made everybody nervous that he was just going to drop the ball at the 1 like he's done a couple times, but ended up scoring there. But yep, the Cowboys rained on the Philadelphia Eagles parade. Finally, as a fan, I can put 2020 behind me. There's no more hope. So now I can look forward to 2021.
Hey, good for you, buddy. I'm glad to hear it.
I guess there has to be some sort of silver lining. And as a fan, I've gone through the roller coaster of emotion to taking the moral victories with seeing what you have in Jalen Hurts and some of the young guys, to just total anger where fire everybody but swoop the mascot and let's just start over with this thing. I have gone through the ringer with the emotions, but I think I'll come out on the other side okay. It's going to be funny. Whoever wins that Giants-Cowboys game at 4:00 on Sunday is going to have to root for the Eagles to beat the Washington football team. So I guess that's a moral victory too.
I wouldn't advise putting any faith in the Eagles based on what we've seen this year. Unfortunately, for whoever emerges victorious in that game. As you said, some bright spots for the Eagles, though few and far between. Djax had that long touchdown reception. Miles Sanders looked as shifty as he always does. He's the best player on that offense. We know that. Jalen Hurts, I thought you said it well comparing him to Vic, because this was kind of like a bad Vic outing. You know, the counting numbers are good, but the two interceptions were killer, and both of them, you know, we watched this game. They were both frustrating, shouldn't have been thrown balls. The one across his body, scrambling left, never should have been thrown. You know, they still had a chance to at least tack on a field goal on that one. I think I might be mistaken. You could correct me. I think both turnovers were on the Cowboys side of the field. So they did have their opportunities, and Jalen Hurts had his flashes, but overall a come down outing. He still looks like a promising rookie. It's just one who will need some continued development.
Somebody who probably needs more than the 3 games and a quarter that he was allotted this year. That's a totally different discussion, and the Carson Jalen thing is something that's going to be overdone over the offseason. I'm sure we'll talk about it over the offseason, so we'll save it for then. I don't have anything else. I've I've yelled everything in my house. I'm a bachelor for another night, so I've gotten to just kind of yell these things in my house and not have to worry about my wife yelling at me to keep it down. So we can just kind of move on to the night game from Sunday, if that's cool. So the Packers beat the Titans 40-14 in a snow game. You always love to kind of see those. Playing in them is not as much of a fun story. Yeah, talk about the Packers and the Titans, man.
I don't know why. I guess maybe I have higher expectations of Tennessee. I was kind of surprised by this outcome. Not that I don't think Green Bay is formidable, not that I'm stunned by them excelling, because we've grown used to that this season. I just thought Tennessee would put up more of a fight, especially given, the elements, the snow on the field. I guess being that Green Bay is the home team and they play in colder climate, you would tend to favor them just based on geographical reasons. But really, Tennessee's the road grading, smash mouth, Derrick Henry led team. You kind of expect to impose their will in shoddy weather. So credit to Green Bay for showing they can get it done in a snowy Lambeau. Rodgers, you know what? I'll eat crow on this one. I argued Mahomes for MVP. I think Rodgers kind of asserted himself as the front runner with another fantastic outing. 21 of 25, so 84% completion percentage. That's quick math. That's pays for being friends with you, buddy. 251 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. It's always so rare to see a Rodgers interception. You have to do a double take, but he did throw one of them. That's his 5th on the season. A.J. Dillon, the Boston College running back, we were surprised to see them draft in the 2nd round. 21 carries, 124 yards, 2 scores. I'll say he just looks like an imposing guy running the football. He's a big old boy. I wouldn't want to get in front of him. And that's to say nothing of Aaron Jones, their Pro Bowl back, who only saw the ball 10 times and got 94 yards out of him. Devontae Adams continues to be an anomaly. 11 catches, 142 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's 17 on the season for Adams. Green Bay looked like a wagon. What do you think?
Yeah, it was interesting. The stat that really stood out to me, since we're on the math thing, Aaron Rodgers threw as many incompletions as he did touchdowns. That's just a freaking wild stat. Again, it was a snow game. The elements weren't great, but you could kind of look at Devontae Adams' numbers with 142 yards and 3 touchdowns to kind of know what sort of day Aaron Rodgers had. I thought he also solidified his spot as MVP for this year. Again, we have one more week of the regular season, but I think that dude has just been so good all year. I'm going to throw somebody else at you later on in that MVP conversation to see if we can stir the pot maybe a little bit. But like you mentioned, Tennessee seems like they would be built for a game that's played in several inches of snow. And then you have Derrick Henry, who was held under 100 yards, which is something that does not happen often. He had 23 carries for 98 yards. Ryan Tannehill, not a great day as far as numbers are concerned. He went 11 of 24, 121 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Also tacked on 55 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown on the day. He actually looked like he had some pretty solid wheels on that touchdown. It was fairly long. A.J. Brown had 4 receptions for 43 yards. And Jonnu Smith, who's been a bright spot in that offense as well this year, also came away with a receiving touchdown. I was very much looking forward to that game. I, like you, thought it might have been a little bit closer of a contest, but the outcome came up all Green Bay.
Yeah, I think, Green Bay jumped out to an early lead, and we kind of saw the Titans are a team, as they say, built to play with a lead. They're not one to play catch up. They were down double digits from the first quarter and then on. That's not their game. They need to be the road grading juggernaut offense led by King Henry that, can take over games and really control the flow of the game, time of possession, all field position, all that. That's how the Titans win. And they know that. Not a death knell to their season by any means, but not the kind of momentum you want to be carrying into January football. Another team on the opposite end of the spectrum in the AFC has oodles of momentum going into January. The Buffalo Bills Monday night waxed the Patriots 38-9. Their first sweep of New England since 1999. I was 7 years old. Lots of interesting takeaways from a game that wasn't all too close. This is New England's first losing season likewise since 1999. That's a testament to their unparalleled run of dominance, and also kind of striking to see how far they've fallen without Tom Brady.
Yeah, you never want to use the word dynasty, or I guess you're always hesitant to use the word dynasty. What we got to watch from the Patriots over the last 2 decades has been a dynasty. It's been a lot of fun to watch. It does look like in that conversation of who was more important, who contributed more to the success of the New England Patriots, it's definitely trending towards Tom Brady right now as opposed to Bill Belichick. Obviously, the Patriots had all of those opt-outs before the season for COVID reasons. They have some other issues as well. Cam Newton has not looked good this year. Actually, I saw a stat earlier that Josh Allen's 4 touchdowns in Foxborough yesterday alone was more than Cam Newton's 2 touchdowns in Foxborough as far as passing concerned. 2 passing touchdowns all year. So yeah, that sort of paints the picture for the Patriots. Josh Allen is rolling. I've said it week in and week out. I'm on the Josh Allen bandwagon. I love what he's doing, what he's able to produce with Stephon Diggs. They had another solid connection this week. So Josh Allen finished 27 of 36 with 320 yards. Again, that 4 touchdowns. He also had 35 yards on the ground off of 4 carries. Stephon Diggs had 9 receptions for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. Again, they look like they've been playing together for a decade. The chemistry is impeccable. I can't wait to see what they're able to do if they are able to kind of make a run. Obviously, already in the playoffs, but if they can, get some momentum, it's going to be fun to watch sort of down the stretch. The Bills defense also had 3 sacks, and then staying on like the offensive side, Zach Moss seemed to be the lead back with 12 carries, 57 yards, and a touchdown. It's nice when you do have a tandem of backs where one can kind of take over for the other, especially in week 16 of the season. On the other end, I talked about Cam Newton's struggles. He was 50% yesterday, Sunday. Went 5 for 10. No, yesterday. It was yesterday. I was right. Yeah, Monday. Went 5 for 10 with 34 yards in the air, had 4 carries for 24 rushing yards. He had a touchdown, ended up getting benched for Jarrett Stidham, who came in and had 44 yards in the air. Sony Michel, another nice moment, had 69 yards on 10 carries. Really just a fitting end to the Patriots season. Obviously, there's another week. They're going to play the Jets next week, but this is sort of who the Patriots were this year.
Yeah, I should kind of rephrase my previous statement. It isn't so much about Brady's departure as it is them finding nothing resembling a competent fill-in. Cam Newton has been abysmal all year long. Stidham, again, brief sample size, but he didn't look like anything resembling an answer. And coming up against the buzzsaw that the Buffalo Bills are emerging to be, this was kind of the expected outcome. To circle back to the winners, again, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. We know this. Josh Allen playing great. You mentioned his connection with Stephon Diggs, otherworldly. But their defense deserves a bunch of credit as well. Just looking here, the Bills, during their 5-game win streak, have allowed less than 20 points 4 times in that stretch. And that's, you got a quarterback playing as well as Josh Allen and a defense that we know the playmakers in the secondary, the Trey Whites, the Josh Normans, the Poyers, the Hydes. This Bills team probably has emerged as the biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC. I say so begrudgingly, but it's tough to deny at this point.
Yep, no, for sure. Their defense has played really well. We talked last week, I believe, about how modern defenses play in the NFL, where you understand you're going to give up points. To give up less than 20 is something to be said. We capped it at 30. We said that if you can keep it under 30 and your offense is good, you have a shot. So yeah, definitely will be interested to watch the Buffalo Bills moving forward as we kind of get to the playoffs. So since we're on the topic of the playoffs, and you were done with the Bills, Pats as well. Okay, cool. So since we're on the topic of the playoffs, we do want to talk about who's in, who's still alive. Again, this is we're going into week 17. A lot of stuff has sort of been clinched and a lot of spots have sort of been solidified, but there are some scenarios this week that we should certainly touch on. So sort of as we are sitting right now, and we'll start with the AFC. So Kansas City is at the top of the AFC, followed by Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Tennessee. They make up those top four, those division leaders. And then when we talk about the wild card right now, Miami, Baltimore, and Cleveland round out the 5, 6, and 7. And then Indianapolis is at number 8, currently not in the playoffs if the season were to win the day. If the season were to end today. So just worth noting, who has clinched so far? The Bills, the Chiefs, and the Steelers have all clinched playoff berths. The Kansas City Chiefs have won the division title. They have the first round bye. They're going to be that 1 seed. They can't be caught with those 14 wins where we are now. And just some sort of, and I'm going to go through a couple of them, and then you could as well. So some scenarios for those wild card teams to make sure that they get in. So when we start with Baltimore, again, they're currently in the 6th seed. Baltimore would clinch a playoff berth this week if they win, or if Cleveland or Indianapolis loses. There are also some tie scenarios that I'm not going to go through because not everybody's the Philadelphia Eagles when they play the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, I'm only a little bitter, dude. I'm only a little bitter.
It only happened twice.
To move on from Baltimore, Cleveland would also clinch a berth if they win, or if Indianapolis loses as well. Indianapolis needs a little bit more help than the other team. They do not control their own destiny solely. They would need a win and a Tennessee loss or tie, or if they were to tie their game and the Titans lost, the Indianapolis Colts would be in as well to clinch the AFC South, just get into the playoffs. Indianapolis could win and then would need Baltimore, Cleveland, or Miami to lose or tie, right? All 4 of those teams are fighting for 3 spots essentially.
Yeah. There's a whole torrent of 10-5 teams in the AFC. It's criminal that one of them will be left out. One double-digit team is assured of not making the playoffs. And the fact that they expanded a 7th seed, and this is still a conversation, is kind of baffling. That isn't to say they should open it up to 8 teams or anything, but it is interesting to see how strong the top of the conference is, the upper half of the conference, I should say. It's like, as you mentioned, there's so many different scenarios. It's tough to make out who will or won't emerge from here. I think the first wild card at present, that's probably the least formidable among the group, is the Miami Dolphins. I don't know. If as a Pittsburgh fan, looking at the way this is shaping up, I would like somehow for Miami to slide into a 6 seed or maybe a 7, depending the result of Pittsburgh's and Buffalo's game. That would be my preferred opponent for Pittsburgh. As a football fan, I'd prefer the Dolphins. And we've gushed about the Dolphins, Brian Flores' coaching job, Fitzmagic, all that. Of the group here, they're the team I think is least deserving. I want to see in the playoffs the least. I think they're the most uninviting matchup for football fans on television, so to say.
Yeah, at least on paper, right? We've been talking at least for the last couple of weeks about just on offense how we see names every week and we're like, who the hell is that? Like, I got to go Google this guy. Miami would get in with a win, or again, if one of those other teams loses, being Baltimore, Cleveland, or Indianapolis. And I didn't touch on Tennessee. Tennessee could still clinch the AFC South. They're currently they would clinch if the season would end today. But they sort of control their own destiny. They can clinch the AFC South with a win. They would still get in with a Baltimore or Miami loss as well. So sort of going to be an interesting show to watch down the stretch for the AFC. There's not going to be anything that's more entertaining than watching the NFC East kind of come to a crashing halt at the end. But that's sort of where we're at with the AFC playoff picture.
Yeah, the AFC will be interesting to see. It's confusing still. We're going to have to watch through the 4 o'clock slate and kind of see how things shape up. Interested to see a lot of games still have playoff relevance this week 17, so that's exciting. The NFC, likewise, is largely shaped up at this point, though, as there still is some conversation as to how the top few seeds will wind up being aligned. Number one currently in the NFC is the Green Bay Packers at 12-3. They could lock up home field with a win this week. Number two, the New Orleans Saints we talked about earlier. Alvin Kamara's big day. They're at 11-4 right now. Likewise, the 3 seed Seattle Seahawks are 11-4. And then the fourth, the other division leader, the 6-9, nice Washington football team. They can lock up their division with a win against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. Of course, their division is still up for grabs. The New York Giants and Dallas Cowboys play each other. If either of those teams wins, and that coincides with the Washington football team lost, that team will then emerge as the NFC East champion. For the wild cards currently in the NFC, the Buccaneers at 10-5 lead the way. They've locked up a playoff spot. The Los Angeles Rams, 9-6, I believe, likewise are locked in. Yes, that is correct. They are locked in. Jared Goff's availability is in question right now, which is interesting. He just had an emergency surgery, I believe, on his wrist.
Thumb, I believe. Thumb.
Okay.
Yep.
And then for the 7th seed in the NFC, there are still 2 teams in the running for that: the Chicago Bears, the Arizona Cardinals. 2 teams that have kind of slipped under the radar as even being playoff eligible, but one of them will be in. I guess we'll start off with which do you think it'll be and why?
Yep. So just to paint the picture for their scenarios, the Cardinals and the Bears both control their own destiny, so they're both in a win and in type of situation. If they were to both win, I'd be interested to see what the tiebreaker is, because you got to go down like to the 6th, 7th, 8th tie-breaking element. Man. So with the Chicago Bears, David Montgomery is somebody who I think is, again, one of those where you could sort of run the air out of the football and be able to kind of make a run just from being able to travel well and handle the elements with a run game like that. I don't think that the Cardinals have that. Not only do they play in a dome in the desert, but just Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds, they haven't been bad, but I think that David Montgomery might be a little bit more built for that in Chicago. Who the hell knows what's going on with their quarterback situation? I guess Trubisky's going to kind of ride the thing out, but neither one would make me excited to watch them in the playoffs. I guess if we are choosing an offense that's more fun, just not from a who do I think would make any noise or anything, I guess that would be the Arizona Cardinals with the weapons that they have on the outside and Kyler Murray. It'd just be more fun to watch, like from a fan perspective. Yeah, but it is interesting to see sort of the disparity between the AFC and the NFC. You could certainly see it with the wild card spots, just as where the NFC is super top heavy with the Packers and the Saints, and then of course the NFC West teams. But ultimately, the AFC is significantly more talented than the NFC and has the records to sort of back that up. Personally, just to kind of talk about the 6-9 nice Washington football team and the NFC East, I vote that everybody ties. I vote that the Cowboys tie the Giants. I vote that the Eagles tie the Washington football team, and then we just watch the world burn.
Oh dear, yes, bring on the madness. And then let's have a 4-team playoff to determine the winner after that. We'll seed the NFC East. God, that sounds like a miserable endeavor. Don't even try to, please. All right, piggybacking off what you said. I think Arizona would be the more fun team to watch, and I think I would say they'd be the more threatening wild card team. I don't expect either to make any kind of Cinderella run, but Arizona seems better poised to make the playoffs. I don't know all the tiebreaker scenarios between they and Chicago, but Arizona is playing the Rams this week. As we mentioned, they'll be without Goff. The Bears, on the other hand, have the Packers, who are still vying for a number 1 seed. I think the Packers have something to play for and will likely shut the door on the Bears. Unlikely playoff run. Middle of the conference, the Buccaneers are quite the imposing wild card. Even their 5 seed spot is almost fortuitous because they're locked into a battle with the whoever emerges with the NFC East. So while they didn't win their division, they certainly like their first playoff matchup now.
Yeah, for sure. And it's worth noting that Kyler Murray got banged up in the last game, so we could be seeing two backup quarterbacks kind of in a must-win situation for the Cardinals, not so much for the LA Rams. But
Right.
Yep, no. So that's kind of who's in, what the scenarios are, kind of how that the playoff picture is going to sort of shake out, and then of course we'll come back next week and talk about where it did all shake out to, right?
Right. Some other end of season business. Playoffs are coming up. Another thing that happens around the end of the season is the Pro Bowl teams are announced. That was about a week ago. There were some snubs and surprises in there. I think we got quite a few more snubs. I guess that's to say there's a surplus of talent in the NFL, but you look at some of these guys that were left off the Pro Bowl roster this year. I'll mention them quick in their production. Devin White, linebacker, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We mentioned him earlier. I didn't realize what a year he had. 140 tackles, 9 sacks, 4 pass breakups, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. That's a remarkable season. Another linebacker counterpart of his, also in the NFC, Blake Martinez, kind of quietly with the Giants, 140 tackles, 2 sacks, a pick, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery. Blake Martinez, and I've seen the Giants a few times this year. The announcers do often gush poetic about him because he seems to be at least always around the ball, kind of quietly. Another guy who maybe was left out undeservedly. Robert Tonyan, tight end for the Green Bay Packers, 50 catches, 568 yards, 10 touchdowns. I had mentioned previously, and I'll mention again here, his counterpart who did make the Pro Bowl in the NFC, Evan Ingram, tight end for the Giants, 61 catches, 637 yards, but 1 touchdown. Granted, the quarterbacks they play with, of course, is a part of that. The offenses they play in, but nonetheless, Tanyan's superior ability to find the end zone, I think, makes him a more worthy candidate. I don't want to steal the entirety of this from you, so I touched on a few of them. I'll let you tack on the others if there's anyone else you want to mention.
Yeah, so we got 2 more here, and somebody who we raved about last week as being maybe underappreciated, but certainly not underpaid, DeForest Buckner, the tackle for the Colts, is putting together a pretty nice season. He has 54 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery. And then somebody else who had a pretty solid season, who might have been deserving of the Pro Bowl, would be defensive end Trey Hendrickson from New Orleans this year, had 24 tackles and 12.5 sacks. I mean, I know that TJ Watt leads the league with 15, but to have 12.5 sacks, just double digits in general, is always a solid year. I think it's interesting that we talked about how much better the AFC is than the NFC, but then 80% of our Pro Bowl snubs were on the NFC side.
Right. I'm not sure what that is. To be honest with you, I think I did the majority of the heavy lifting on this portion. So I guess I was.
Way to go. You thought that they got the AFC right and the NFC was just a crock of shit. Go ahead, man.
More Steelers made it in the AFC, so I was more content with that, obviously.
That's fair. Yeah. They got to your heartstrings. I understand. Some surprises that we got in the Pro Bowl here. So go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I should say, because I did say that, but then 2 of the guys that I have listed here as surprises are, in my opinion, guys who maybe weren't so deserving, are 2 Pittsburgh Steelers linemen, David DeCastro and Marquise Pouncey. 2 guys that have both been in, I think, at least half a dozen of them. Pouncey's closing in on 10, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that this tends to happen with offensive linemen. I think they're kind of riding on reputation. Not that either was bad this year, so to speak. Both held up well in pass protection. Big Ben's been sacked something like 13, 14 times. Obviously, great production in terms of pass protection, but there's absolutely no push in the ground game. And it's just, we don't have a lot of stats for offensive linemen. So it's like you and I have talked about in the past. It's just eye test. Neither of these guys, to me, looked like a Pro Bowler this year. I think there's more worthy candidates that were left out on reputation more than anything else, which isn't anything new for the Pro Bowl. It's one of the biggest gripes people have about it year to year.
Yeah, the Pro Bowl tends to be a popularity contest, and you're absolutely right about interior offensive linemen. When I feel like a lot more people know tackles throughout the league than they do guards and centers. I mean, they tend to get the money. You don't have a lot of guards that are making buku money, even though there are ones that are deserving of it. But yeah, David DeCastro and Marquise Pouncey are certainly names that people would recognize, even if you're not sure.
Right.
You just see those names and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, those guys are good. I guess I've heard their names before, so they're solid. Evan Ingram was another surprise that you had mentioned. Only found the end zone one time this year. Again, we both are kind of on the Robert Tonyan train and would think that he would be more deserving of a Pro Bowl selection this year than Evan Ingram. To be honest, you know who wins the Pro Bowl this year? The fans. We don't actually have to see it be played. They're going to do some Madden stuff. They're going to do some Zoom stuff. It has progressively become, I mean, it was always a joke, but it has just become even more to where like they don't go to the ground. It's not even, it's like playing flag football in the NFL. It's not something that I mean, I watch it, but it's not something that I ever get excited about. It's not something that I'm ever, really like honed in on as far as who makes it and who doesn't. But yeah, it is kind of a popularity contest. But again, we don't have to watch it this year, so it's going to be nice for us, the fans. We are up against it right now, but we are going to finish up with a game that we've played once already. We're going to bring it back. We call it Hike It or Spike It. A statement's given, and we will either agree with it and hike it and receive the ball, or we will spike it. We will throw that thing away because we don't agree with it. So the first one, Andy, I will ask you. Chase Young will win Defensive Rookie of the Year. This year had 30 tackles, 6.5 sacks, four forced fumbles. Some other candidates to sort of think about: Isaiah Simmons, who is the linebacker out in Arizona, has had 47 tackles this year. And Patrick Queen is somebody that I certainly get an earful about from the geographic location that I live in. But Chase Young wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. Andy, hike it or spike it?
I'm going to hike it. I think Chase Young at the second overall pick, we know his talents, and I think he lived up to them. Some people are a little disappointed by the counting numbers, but near 7 sacks, 4 forced fumbles for rookies, nothing to sneeze at. And as you mentioned, the candidates this year aren't necessarily overwhelming. Isaiah Simmons, Patrick Queen, I added them in there. Those are the next two in the Las Vegas odds at present. Chase Young lived up to expectations. I wouldn't necessarily say he surpassed them, that he blew anyone away, but I think he was the best defensive rookie in the league this year. Here's my beautiful girlfriend. What say you, Pumpkin?
Chase Young, Defensive Rookie of the Year. I would assume that she would hike it as well. I'm going to hike this one also. Patrick Queen certainly makes a case for himself with 99 tackles on the year. Again, they have another game to play, but just kind of being a fan of a team that's in the same division and watching him. I've only seen him once. Unfortunately, I get to watch him again against Jordan Mailata or Matt Pryor. Again, only a little bit bitter. I would hike this one as well. Not because Chase Young maybe is more deserving or has like had this sort of like blow up where he's kind of been like head and shoulders above the other candidates. But I would say that he probably wins that one.
Yeah, just by meeting expectations. And we could expect, as you mentioned, playing the Eagles this week, we can expect him to add another 1 or 2 on to his sack total, most likely. I'll take the ball here, ask you, second down, hike it or spike it. Tom Brady deserves mention in the MVP conversation. Right now, Mr. Brady has 4,234 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, and 11 picks.
Yeah, so this is one that I'm going to hike. This is one that I had added, and I had been listening to a few podcasts on my ride back to Baltimore from Pennsylvania on Monday and just listening to kind of what Tom Brady was able to do as far as numbers are concerned, besides what I've seen with my own 2 eyes. This award is always weird because valuable is so subjective and could mean something different just amongst teams, not even in conferences or divisions, but just team to team. Value could be looked at differently. Like, for example, Derrick Henry is by far the most valuable player on the Tennessee Titans. literally everything that they're able to do is through Derrick Henry. If you take Derrick Henry off of the Titans are not going to be in as good of a spot as they would be with Derrick Henry. With Tom Brady getting the Buccaneers to the playoffs, I don't know if you remember the last quarterback that got the Buccaneers to the playoffs, but it was Jeff Garcia in 2004. It's been a long time, and what Brady's been able to accomplish now, granted, he's not devoid of weapons around him, and we talked about that offense and how good they are. But being able to put up over 4,000 yards, have the 36 touchdowns, the 11 picks is not necessarily Brady-like, but I think that kind of goes back to not having a true offseason and being able to gain some chemistry with those guys in training camp. But I would say that he deserves mention. It's going to be a Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers award this year. I don't think he wins it, but I certainly think that he should be brought up in the conversation.
Quick fact check. Just I thought that sounded funny. We'll have to take that up with the producers. Buccaneers was Jeff Garcia. It was 2007 against the Giants.
2004. Yep. I apologize. I was actually I was looking at Jamarcus Russell's numbers before, as funny as that sounds, but that was probably in the same era.
I've been there. No worries. Listen, we'll talk.
Got to fire the producer. We got to fire the producer. I said it last week. We got to do it even more this week. I apologize. Not 2004. Jeff Garcia, I'm sure you listened to this podcast. You knew it was 2007, buddy. My deepest condolences. I apologize.
No, we will continue to get things wrong in the future. I can assure you all of that. In this instance, I don't think you got it wrong, Tom Brady. I'm going to hike it. Deserves mention in the MVP conversation. Is he a favorite, a front runner? No. But a mention, a finalist, I think I'd say yeah. I would say for my own mind's eye, he's probably number 4 right now after the obvious candidates, Rodgers, Mahomes, Josh Allen. I would say Tom Brady probably from September to December has been the next best quarterback. And as we know, MVP is a quarterback's award. So, yeah, I'm going to hike it. I agree with you. Tom Brady does deserve mention in the MVP conversation. Of course, due to voter fatigue, he's not going to get any. That being the case, we'll move on to number 3, which is a team from the AFC will hoist the Lombardi Trophy in 2021 on February the 7th, one day before my good buddy's birthday. What do you think? Hike it or spike it?
Well, first of all, I think that the good buddy you're referring to is me. My birthday happens to be February 8th. If you have another buddy with a February 8th birthday, sorry, pal, I surpass you. So just some AFC teams, and we mentioned them in the playoff conversation. The Chiefs, the Steelers, the Bills, the Titans, the Dolphins, the Ravens, and the Colts all have more, or at least 10 wins, I guess I should say. Everybody's favorite is the Chiefs for this year, and just in all the power rankings, it's really apparent. To kind of compare that to the NFC teams at the top there, the Packers, the Saints, the Seahawks, the Bucks, the Rams. I am going to hike this one as well. I think I hiked the other two. It doesn't matter. I think that between the Chiefs and the Bills, I'm really high on the Bills. The Chiefs offense is obviously super dynamic as well. You got to remember the game is going to be played in Tampa Bay, so weather won't be a factor unless there's like a monsoon or something like that. But it's not going to be a cold weather game or that weird. I don't know if you remember when the Super Bowl was played at MetLife, and that was a weird experience. But it is going to be in Tampa. I think that the AFC teams that we mentioned have offenses that can be sort of dominant, especially when we're talking about compared to the NFC teams that I mentioned before with the Packers and the Saints and Seahawks and Bucks.
You know, we need a little difference here on We Like Football. I'm going to go against the grain here, and this is going to be surprising, being I'm something of an AFC cat myself. I'm going to spike this one, mostly because I don't think the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl, but I'm not I can't concede it to any of these other AFC foes. We mentioned how strong the conference is. I'm going to say maybe it'll be a war by attrition. These teams are going to cannibalize each other. On the other end, the Packers look to be head and shoulders the class of the conference. I think Rodgers' revenge tour here is going to continue. We've kind of been waiting for him to get that, second Lombardi, entrench himself. Obviously, Rodgers is one of the best of all time, first ballot Hall of Famer, all that. But his detractors will still point to his only having one Super Bowl. they'll always find something. But it feels like maybe this is the time that Rodgers returns to glory, so to say.
Yeah, if there's somebody in the NFC to do it, it is probably the Packers, and we saw that in full display when they put it on the Titans this past week. The Saints would also be up there if not for Drew Brees, and you hope that the injury isn't going to have long-lasting implications or what have you, but he certainly had his struggles since he has come back. All right, so I had hiked it, Andy had spiked it. Number 4, we always save the nonsense that nobody cares about for last. So number 4, peanut butter and chocolate is a better combination than, do you say caramel or caramel?
Oh, caramel, get out of here with that caramel nonsense.
Absolutely. We are not a fancy people. Caramel sounds like a fancy type of word. That is not who we are. We say caramel here. I am going to hike this. Peanut butter and chocolate is undoubtedly a better combination than caramel. I almost did it. I almost did it. After I put everybody else down, I almost did it. Then caramel and chocolate. If you asked me, I would say that Milky Way is my favorite candy bar, but I have a box of peanut butter smidgens downstairs that are just freaking delightful. You give me a Reese's cup, you give me an egg or a tree or whatever Reese's makes. It's all phenomenal. I'm taking peanut butter and chocolate, and I will die on that hill.
God, I hate agreeing with you so often, but I guess this is what makes us such good pals, such good co-hosts. Peanut butter and chocolate, it's elite. You're not going to do any better. Hike it. Caramel rocks. I'm a big fan. Twix is dope. Milky Way is cool. Reese's peanut butter cup, number 1. Peanut butter and chocolate, number 1.
Far and away, I kind of knew that we would be in agreement. So while we have time, I guess, because we're going to kind of wrap it up with the caramel and chocolate thing. So we did lose a good friend this year, earlier in the year, back in January. Our friend Kevin Bond passed away. A lot of health implicated, a lot of genetic defects, and just the dude was dealt a shitty hand. We miss the hell out of that guy every day. It is his birthday today, and the reason that I bring that up with this conversation is because he was somebody who was notorious for always bringing enough milk duds to share with the class, but he never actually shared the milk duds with the class. So happy birthday to Kevin Bond, to his family, to Kevin Sr., and to Berget. Our sympathies go out to you. We certainly miss him quite a bit as well. We got into a nice conversation this weekend about how we kind of carry on his life, even though he's not here anymore. We carry it on through humor and just by, continuing to talk about him and to bring him up into our own personal conversation. So happy birthday to Kevin Bond.
Yep. Happy birthday, Bondo. I don't know what it is you liked about Milk Duds, or the Jets for that matter. You did have some weird taste, but you picked two good buddies in me and Hayden. So, you weren't all bad. No, in all seriousness, love you, Bond. Happy birthday. Great friend. To all our friends and viewers, thanks for viewing. Like, share, subscribe. We like football.
We like football.